everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about the Salt Lake Temple and some new renderings of the renovation and some interesting details. And also, as I was looking into this, I found another couple interesting things. So I did this because I just received an email from Grant Polsander, and he says, there have been new renderings of Temple Square. Will you please take a look at the Salt Lake Temple photograph gallery, and will you make a video of this tonight? Well, I wasn't able to do it last night, but I appreciate the urgency. This is a new story, and so first, okay, so what I want to do before we look at the new renderings is I want to go through kind of like from beginning to end how the renderings have changed and like details as they came out chronologically. There's some interesting stuff and things that we haven't covered before on the channel, and then we're gonna look at the end. We're gonna look at the changes and just point some interesting things out. Okay, so the very first, now this is not necessarily a comprehensive review of every article that came out. As far as I know, there's only been like a few stories that have come out whenever there's been updates to these renderings and plans as they've changed. Okay, but I got, I think, the most important ones. So we have this first one that came out April 23rd, 2019. Take a look at the project renderings for the Salt Lake Temple renovation. Okay, so here, I think this is the first time that we really get renderings of the Salt Lake Temple and what's going to happen. So I just pulled them up here in different tabs. So this is what Temple Square used to look like. This is in the 30s. You'll notice, I mean, there's not a whole lot here. You definitely don't have a big North Visitor Center. I think this was the original endowment house. I'm not sure, but you have that there. That has since changed. I don't know what these other smaller buildings are. And then on top of the tabernacle, it says Salt Lake Airport, and then it has what I think is an arrow pointing toward the west. So that's very odd to me. I don't know how long that was on there, or I'm surprised that they even did that, but whatever. Okay, so here it is, you know, that's what it looked like in the 30s. Here it is in the 60s, and now we have the North Visitor Center. This is the one that has, or had, the Christus statue in this kind of circular dome portion of the building. There's the assembly hall. Now the Salt Lake Airport wording is removed from the top of the tabernacle. And then by this point, this was probably the South Visitor Center, because that looks more like what most of us are used to. Okay, now this is what it looked like before the renovation began. Here is definitely the South Visitor Center, the North Visitor Center. Here's that. I've never actually. I think they've referred to this as the Temple Annex. I'm not sure, but this replaced, you know, this what I think is the original endowment house. I'm not sure. That's not the point of this video. Okay, and this is how I last remember it, because the last time I was at Temple Square, this is what it looked like. But that was a while ago. We left Utah in right at the very beginning of 2012. We moved to Arizona, and I haven't really been back since. So this is what I remember, but they've torn down the North Visitor Center. I mean, a lot of you would probably know better than me what it currently looks like. I know that there's like pictures. I haven't looked at them too closely. Okay, now here, okay, this is a bird's eye view of what the renovations were supposed to look like as of 2019. So up here, this is the church office building. My dad used to work here, by the way. He was a software engineer for the church. Here's the Church Administration Building, the Joseph Smith Memorial Building right here. Here's the reflecting pool, Salt Lake Temple, and then it shows you, as you can see, in this one, it still has the North Visitor Center down here, but that has since changed. And then the South Visitor Center, I don't know as of right now if these two buildings on the south are like two different visitor centers. I'm not sure what they are, but you can see these two buildings here on the south side, and they look different from the ones on the north side. Now, they all have green roofs that match the Salt Lake Temple, right? And then these ones over here have a different shape. It looks like not only is like the rectangular portion larger, but on top of that, it has like this kind of cross-looking shape on top, like two levels of cross-type shapes. And this is on the north side. Okay, so this is what the plans were in 2019, and some of these things have changed in interesting ways, and we're about to explore that. Okay, this would be from the south side looking north. Here's those two rectangular buildings. I'm assuming that they're probably visitor centers. And then just you walk straight in and there's the Salt Lake Temple. Here's just like another angle. It's higher up and you can actually see the roofs right here, that greenish color. This is on the north side looking south. And then here's those two other buildings that have like the cross type features on the top. Now, one thing I had never noticed before, because I hadn't looked at these since I did these videos, look at these visitor center things. They have the arch pillar architecture that we've seen in other places. And it's not exactly the same because the arches, immediately after you like go through the arch, you run right into a glass window. So it's not like you walk through the arches, but the arches on these buildings are a really prominent feature. On the other building, they're not, I mean, they're arches, but they're square, you see. So on this side, they're square. On the north side, they're like these circular, round arches. I just think that's kind of interesting. We've noted before all the kind of arch type shapes on the Salt Lake Temple. We've looked at the two front doors. The new church symbol perfectly fits into the east doors of the temple, and it seems that inspiration was taken from that to make the church symbol. I've done videos on that, so there's more to it. I'm not just saying that, so go watch those videos if you're interested in the new church symbol and what it seems to represent on top of what they've already told us. But just arches, 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 arches. And then over here, this just caught my eye because this is very similar to what we've talked about on the channel before. Here's just one more angle of it right here. Look at the arches. Arch, 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 arch. And then here are like the skylights, because like you still enter in and then you go down below ground, and then that's how you enter the temple, is from underneath. And so as you're walking down here, you look up through the skylights and then you see the Salt Lake Temple. But as far as the arches go, okay, if you're new to the channel, I've done like this whole thing on, so I've done this whole thing on the Independence, Missouri Visitor Center. We know that this has been intended to be part of the future temple complex in New Jerusalem, and look at the architecture. Right now, it's just a visitor center. But according to Alvin R. Dyer's diary, this can be turned into a temple whenever that time comes. It's just a fact. And I actually did a video recently where if they copy this building, they can do the 24 temple complex on the land that the church already owns. I used Photoshop to just kind of see if it would work, and it does. So check out that video if you haven't already. But so here you would have, one world capital, the New Jerusalem. Here, back here in Salt Lake, currently, you could say that this is the world's current spiritual world capital for the true church, and you have these arches here. Now, it's not on the temple itself, but the temple itself has a ton of these arch kind of features. Not the exact same type, but I just think it's interesting that they chose to do this with these presumably visitor centers. I'm not sure if maybe one of them is like an entrance to the temple. I don't really know. But we have the Independence, Missouri Visitor Center of the church with the arches. We've talked about the BYU Jerusalem Center, same thing, arches and pillars and blocky top. In this case, the Independence Visitor Center also has a blocky top. We've talked about how I have a whole playlist, an entire playlist on the BYU Jerusalem Center and why I believe that it's intended to become a temple in the future. And why it's so significant and why all these miracles had to happen to make this a reality. So anyway, but notice the arch architecture. We pointed out the Brasilia, Brazil temple, which very much resembles, I mean, not exactly, of course, but it very much resembles the BYU Jerusalem Center with the arches, the blocky tops with like 2 tiers, just like how this has 2 tiers on the top. And this is the capital of Brazil. It's the capital of Brazil. So we have the capital of New Jerusalem. We have the capital of Old Jerusalem. We have the capital of Brazil. We have the current capital of the church, or spiritual capital, however you want to think of it, the headquarters. Now it's going to have even more of these arches. Okay. Now, it's interesting because as I was looking, I don't know how this came up. I can't even remember what search I did. But this came up. This is Nauvoo, Illinois, and this is the visitor center right here. Let's zoom in. What is one of the features that the visitor center has for Nauvoo, Illinois? Oh, it's arches, rounded top arches, and it even has like where you walk through. You walk between the pillars and you're not yet inside the interior of the building, just like all these other ones over here, with the exception of the Salt Lake Temple Visitor Center. With these, you have these pillars, you walk past the pillars, you're still not inside the actual building itself. Same with the BYU Jerusalem Center. Same with the Brazil Temple. And now we have the Nauvoo Visitor Center that also has this feature. And then we have the Nauvoo Temple that I never knew this before, because why would I have looked at this before until now? The Nauvoo Temple, in the very front, you have rounded top arches. You walk through and you're not yet in the interior of the temple. So it's too much. For me, it's too much. You may think that it's nothing. Maybe you're right. But I feel like it's like too much correlation, too much coincidence to be coincidence. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Okay. It makes sense to me why the new church symbol looks the way it does. And again, I've done videos on that. So if you want to know more why I think that, then go watch those videos about the church symbol. So I definitely do think that something is going on here. And of course, the windows of the Nauvoo Temple also, just like the Salt Lake Temple, a ton of rounded top, arch type geometry for the windows. Okay, so moving on from that, here we have, excuse me, here we have an article. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. This is January 11th, 2021. Okay, so last year, this is when I guess it was announced that they were going to have this oval feature in front of the church, or between the church office building and the administration building. Okay, up until this point, there were. Let's go back over here. Up until this point, there was a fountain right here. This is the area in question right here. There was a fountain. They decided to take that out, which I still am very sad about. I loved that fountain. Now, you'll notice that these plans from 2019 did not have the oval. Okay, so they decided to change that. They changed this, and now it's going to have this oval, and the oval is going to be surrounded by all the flags of the world around it. Okay, which of course brings the image of a global church, right? So it's interesting they changed that. Okay. Okay, now we've actually kind of covered part of this article before, but First Presidency announces Salt Lake Temple changes, increasing capacity, impacting live sessions, Manti Temple next for renovation. Let's see, we have pictures here. Nothing really too different from what we already know. Well, actually, I better save this for... Okay, so I highlighted some stuff from this article. Okay, now there's going to be 2 baptistries in the Salt Lake Temple after the renovation. It currently just has 1. And I've done a video about which temples have 2 baptistries. So you might want to check that out if that kind of interests you. And it is interesting to me. But, okay, so this one has 2 baptistries. This is what the new one is going to look like right here. Okay, and then it's going to move, the Salt Lake Temple is going to move from live presentations to film if you're going through for an endowment session, which may make some people sad. That was kind of like, the Salt Lake Temple was one of the few temples that still did live presentations. There were only like a handful. I think, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Idaho Falls Temple used to do live presentations, and basically, like, you know, the older pioneer era temples. I think the Manti Temple as well. The Manti Temple also did it. Maybe the Logan, but I've never been to the... Well, I went to the Manti Temple, but that was a long time ago. I cannot remember for the life of me if it was live or not. I remember changing rooms. I think there were a lot of rooms, so maybe it was live. Anyway, so in both the Salt Lake and Manti temples, the member experience previously included... Oh, here's the answer right here. The member experience previously included a progressive room-to-room presentation by live actors. However, both will be transitioning to single-room presentations by film, similar to what is done in the church's other temples worldwide. Now, that might be sad to some people. It is to me, because I enjoy going from room to room and seeing the different murals and stuff like that. To me, that's sad, but this is why they're doing it, okay? And this has to do with the hastening of the work, I think. This was not like a light decision, I don't think. Now, look what they say. Quote, this is from the First Presidency. This decision will also make it possible to hold more sessions each day. We hope it'll help more members feel confident to serve as ordinance workers without the requirement for lengthy memorization. So, they're wanting more sessions to be done. They want more sessions to be done in the temple. In addition to what they're doing here and in the Manti Temple, we also have a ton of temples that are currently announced and under construction. President Nelson holds the record for the number of temples announced. Okay, so prior to renovation, live presentation endowment sessions in the Salt Lake Temple started every hour. Okay, every hour, with the 5 instruction rooms operating after the temple's reopening. Sessions will be able to start every 20 to 30 minutes. Compare that to an hour. Okay, every 20 to 30 minutes, allowing more flexibility for patrons attending the temple. So that is good. Okay, the murals, it says, will need to be moved and or repainted. Some sections of murals were in poor condition and beginning to crumble. Quote, this is from the First Presidency. It was impossible to know whether the murals could be preserved during such a move. They were originally painted directly on lath, or I don't know if that's lath and plaster walls, which had been repaired and repainted many times because of water damage and other deterioration. Further change to a film presentation meant the rooms would be reconfigured. So that of course would affect the murals, and that's sad too because those are like I think they're original murals with the exception of having been repainted and touched back up. So that's kind of sad, but we do have to move on. We have to move on into the future. Okay, here is. I think this is a rendering. A rendering of the celestial room, rendering of the celestial room. This is what it's going to look like, and you can see some differences because there didn't used to be. I don't think there used to be like a door. You would like come out like the sides right here, if I remember right, and there used to be like this kind of like feminine figure up here, which. There's a history behind that. I think it was like a gift, actually, from the Catholic Church. Excuse me. But as you can see, that's not there anymore. So it looks like you'll come through these doors. I think this looks like a mirror. There's like a mirror on both sides, and of course they have the arch shape. So, there's definitely some differences. When you go into the Holy of Holies right here, that has that arch shape. So, okay. For these reasons, the murals were carefully photographed and documented excuse me, before removal, with some original portions being preserved in the church's archives. In the Manti Temple, the murals will be similarly photographed, documented, and removed. Yeah, because the Manti Temple had like a kind of the same thing going on there. Okay, so excuse me. That's it for that article. Here's like a bigger picture of the baptistry, which I think is great. It's beautiful. Now here are the murals in question. These are going to be changed. In fact, I think it was back in this. Okay, let's go back to this article. I think they had pictures of what the new ordinance rooms are going to look like. Yeah, here's one right here. See, this one doesn't have any murals at all. This is a rendering of an endowment room in the renovated Salt Lake Temple. And it has that kind of like seafoam type green color that's on the roof of the temple. Same for the carpet and the seats and everything. So this is drastically different from what there was. Because what there was, I have pictures of that. Look at this right here. This was just completely a 360 mural, basically. And then you had this one here. This is the garden room, and then this one over here is the telestial room, which I really enjoyed. I like the stairs right here. I like the vintage feel of it. So anyway, but I guess I don't know if this is what those rooms are going to turn into. I don't know where this is in the temple, but here's a rendering of at least one of the endowment rooms, right? Okay, here's a ceiling room, a rendering of one of the 10 new ceiling rooms that will be built in the renovated Salt Lake Temple. There will be 23 total ceiling rooms. Yeah, because the Salt Lake Temple is a popular one to get sealed in. A rendering of endowment room in the renovated Salt Lake Temple. It still has kind of some of the original aesthetic of the terrestrial room, from what I remember, but it does definitely look different, and that's fine. And then here's the celestial room. Okay. All right, let's move on. Okay, now, this is what Grant was pointing me to. LDS Church offers new glimpse of what Temple Square will look like after renovations. Okay, here's the picture. We're going to look at this closely in just a minute. Let's see. It's the latest peek at a project that began in January 2020 and was originally scheduled to be done in 2024. Until the church... Sorry, there's the daily siren. It's noon at the time that I'm recording this. Until the church announced in December that the 4-year plan is now a 5-year plan that will wrap up in 2025. And we've talked about that. That's kind of interesting. Here's just like another angle. Okay, this one's looking from the southwest. This one is looking from the northwest. So just two different angles. The golden angel statue atop the temple lost its trumpet and stones were dislodged from the spires. The statue was removed in May 2020 and is undergoing repairs and then will be reinstalled. So this is something that I didn't... Okay, I've done videos about the significance of the Angel Moroni on the flagship temple of the church, like one of the most important buildings in the church. Losing his trumpet after an earthquake in 2020, and then after that came just like the full force of COVID, and we're still like dealing with the effects, I think, of that. Now, I really think that signaled the beginning of an increase or start, like a beginning of the end of sorts. But what I didn't know is, and you'll have to confirm this for me if you live in the Salt Lake area, because the way I'm reading this is that since that time, the Angel Moroni has been taken down, and he has been down this entire time. I think that is kind of interesting. That's interesting because if it, just like the Angel Moroni dropping his trumpet, having the statue taken down, like if Moroni like leaves from on top of the Salt Lake Temple and he's gone for this whole time, that's almost like an even more stark warning or like symbolism that you could attach to like when he originally dropped his trumpet. It's like, okay, it's done, I'm out, I'm gone. Of course he's going to come back, but I find that kind of interesting. They're drilling a new well. I don't know if the old one had a well, or it's just kind of weird that it's on well. It's going to be on well water. If you have any knowledge of that, let me know. The 11-foot replica of Bertel Thorvaldsen's Christus statue, which once stood in the North Visitor Center, will return to Temple Square according to the church, but where it will be placed has not been announced. So I can only assume it's going to be in one of those 4 buildings that we were looking at before. The walkway through the Main Street Plaza will close on April 11th and isn't scheduled to reopen until fall 2023. So that Main Street Plaza... That's kind of bizarre to me. It's not bizarre, but it's like surreal. It feels surreal that would be closed. I guess this whole thing kind of feels surreal to me. But yeah, if you're planning on walking down the Main Street Plaza and enjoying those views of the temple, you better do it before the 11th. Okay, how many days do we got? That's like only a couple weeks away. So you better do it now, because you're not going to be able to do it again until fall of 2023. Let's see. Now, this is interesting. A larger reflecting pool can be installed. Wait, what? A larger reflecting pool is going to be installed. So that's the big oval pool in front of the temple. And landscaping can be refreshed to better integrate the Main Street Plaza with the newly planned Church Office Building Plaza in the Salt Lake Temple grounds. Yeah, because we've talked about this before on the channel, how the idea is to make this entire 2 city blocks the Temple Square block and then the church office building block. Basically one big Temple Square. Like almost like you're extending Temple Square to include this over here. So everything is going to mesh together really well. Okay, now let's look at some of the details that came up. I don't know if this is what Grant is talking about, and I don't know if I'm going to miss it in this video. But what I noticed, let's zoom in here. Okay, remember how there's like maybe like 3 details that I noticed that are interesting. Remember how we were talking about the color of the Salt Lake Temple, the roof of the Salt Lake Temple, how it was like that seafoam gray or green? Well, look at what color it is now. Now it's like this kind of dark brown. I don't know if this is like kind of like a bronzish color. I don't know if it's glossy, if it's flat, but from this picture, in any case, it's not that seafoam green anymore. It's like a dark brown or bronzish kind of color. And matching with that are these 2 north buildings. The top tier cross is going to have that brown color, not the one underneath. Underneath, it's going to be kind of like a grayish color. And then, so that's one thing. Look at the different color on the top of the temple. That's really. I'm so used to seeing the Salt Lake Temple with the green top. I don't know. It's just part of what the temple is, and now it's fundamentally. This is like the biggest change to the exterior of the temple itself is the roof. It's the roof. That's fascinating. Okay, now the second thing that I noticed. Well, actually, this is the second thing I noticed, but the second thing that we're going to talk about are these south buildings. Okay, let's look at the original 2019. Bird's eye view of Temple Square. So see here, the entire top of these 2 buildings were going to be the same green as the Salt Lake Temple, and then these 2 buildings down here were also going to be that same green. Okay, so let's just go back here and look at it again. So you have the brown, bronze color. Now these 2 buildings down here, they're not going to have that bronze color. It's going to be gray. Okay, but the second thing that I want to point out is look at the shape. Look at the shape of these 2 southern buildings. It's the arch shape. Now, if I had like a straight-on view of this, I would try and see if the symbol of the church fits into this. That would be kind of interesting. But it's interesting that they changed the shape, because the original shape was just a rectangle. It was just a rectangle. See? Now it's this kind of like round arch shape on top. So I find that interesting. So different color roofs, different shape for these southern 2 buildings. And then if you'll notice here, when you walk in to Temple Square from right here, because I think that I can't remember where the entrances are, if they changed where the... I feel like... Yeah, okay, now look at this. So, this is from, like, the original 2019 rendering. So, they're going to have the entrance right here, centered on the temple. So, you'd walk through here, okay, you have the 2 southern buildings right here on either side. So, you walk through here between these 2 buildings, and this is the original 2019 image, and you have like this rectangular flower bed, and then this square, I don't know if this is like a fountain, I don't know, and then another flower bed, rectangular in shape. But in the new rendering, you don't have those at all. You have like a big circular feature, and what is most likely a fountain. or maybe it's a statue. I'm not sure. I don't know what that is. But I guess we'll see as time goes on. And then you can see the larger reflecting pool in front of the temple right there. And then in this rendering, they included the oval-shaped feature in front of, or between the church office building and the administration building. So it's all pretty. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. This portion over here of Temple Square, this is where the North Visitor Center used to be, right here. As you can see, that's gone, and it looks like it's mostly just grassy areas, gardens. This might be either a fountain or a statue right here. And then this building down here, I'm assuming that this is some sort of like utility building, probably for like the Temple Square gardening staff and landscaping staff. I don't know for sure. It looks like the assembly hall and the kind of like the fountain that's in front of that. It looks like that's basically the same and has remained intact. Yeah, so that's basically it. It's interesting that they would decide, like, why would they be like, you know what? Instead of a rectangle, we need to make this more of like a, an arch shape from the top. It could be, maybe it has to do with like when you're inside the building and like there's these large windows, maybe it makes for better viewing of the temple because it's rounded on this side. So maybe that's why. I don't know. It's just speculation. But changing the color of the roof of the Salt Lake Temple, that is like a fundamental change. That really, really is. It's almost like signaling a new phase or a new era that we're moving into. So it's interesting. Okay, so that's all that I have for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll have to let me know. I mean, did you notice anything else? Do you have any other details to share? Do you have any additional information? Do you have any different interpretations of things? Put that in the comments below, or feel free to email me if you have like additional information. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Make sure to share it with anyone that has an interest in the Salt Lake Temple and the renovation and what's going on, because this is a pretty interesting. I still can't actually get over it. I look at it and it doesn't look right, but I like it. I like how it looks. But all right, and I'll talk to you guys later.